Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Leggett, and I am the program manager at the Central Florida International Trade Office, where we help connect local businesses in Central Florida to the opportunities in the global marketplace. Just a few footnotes at the beginning. I just want to let everyone know that you're on mute at the moment, but I think if we don't get more participants, then we'll unmute you at the end and you can ask questions and answers at that point in time. But if you want to make sure that you get the questions in, there is a Q&A bar at the right, and you can put the questions in there and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. Also, I'll let you know that we will be sharing a copy of the presentation with you after the presentation when we do some follow-up on this. So I'd like you to join me in welcoming Mr. Kenneth Mouradian this morning. Ken is the director of the Orlando U.S. Export Assistance Center, and I'll let him expand on what he does there. And he's also the executive secretary of the Central North Florida District Export Council, on which I am proud to also serve as the vice chair for trade policy. Ken came to Orlando in 2002 as a foreign service officer, which is a U.S. diplomat, on a 2-year tour of duty. Evidently, he fit in very well to the community, as he's been here ever since. And prior to that, Ken served at the U.S. mission to the European Union, where he was responsible for the biotechnology and pharmaceutical sectors, among others, as well as a management program analyst in Washington, D.C. Ken also has substantial private sector experience, and he writes and speaks French fluently. So thank you, Ken, for sharing your experience and expertise with us today, and I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thanks. You know, I'm trying to get my background to change, so you know, it's not quite working for me, but all right. So we are going to go share my screen here. Hold on a sec. Oh, look at that. It doesn't automatically have them open. All right. I apologize to all of you if I seem a little bit of a goofball here. Actually, you know what, Chris, if you have my slides available, let's just do that, because I don't see how this is not giving me my, let me see. Yeah, there you go. So Chris is putting my slides up. All right, so I take it you have full screen now, right, Chris? Okay, so do you want to go back one screen? All right, so I assume you can hear me, is that right? There seems to be a question in the chat here. Oh, it's just Chris saying good morning, everybody. Okay, good. All right, so my name is Kenneth Mouradian. As Chris had said, I'm director of a field office in the U.S. Department of Commerce. So if you want to think of the Commerce Department like one of those Russian nesting dolls, where there's a doll inside of a doll inside of a doll, et cetera, the Department of Commerce would be the outer doll. Inside of that is a set of bureaus, right? So I work for a bureau that's called the International Trade Administration. And we, as a bureau, promote U.S. export and trade, generally speaking. And then within the International Trade Administration, there are 3 operating units, and one of them is called the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service, and that's the one that I work for. We, as a subset of the International Trade Administration, are the commercial section of the U.S. Embassy. There are really 3 things that we do. We promote U.S. origin export in foreign markets. So we help you to sell your products in foreign markets. We defend U.S. commercial interests abroad, and we attract inward foreign direct investment into the United States. So we don't help you to move a company overseas, but a foreign company that wants to move here or a U.S. company that wants to reshore, we certainly do those 3 things. So if you can advance the slide one. Now, the U.S. Department of Commerce heads up an interagency body called the Trade Promotion Coordinating Committee. And the agencies you see listed here are all a part of the TPCC. Now, Chris is going to send my slide presentation to you after we're done. So the point of my saying that is that each of these listed items, agencies, are hyperlinked. So you don't necessarily have to take notes on things. You can just basically take a look at the slides and click. But like I was saying, the Department of Commerce is like one of those Russian nesting dolls. There are a bunch of different agencies within the Commerce Department that have something to do with international trade and therefore could help you to develop an export marketing plan, refine an export marketing plan, or implement an export marketing plan. And so I'm going to hold the Department of Commerce in reserve. We have other slides about the USDOC. The Department of State. There are different agencies within the State Department that can help you, but there's one I want to point out right now, and that's the Bureau of Political and Military Affairs, and in specific, the Directorate of Defense Trade Controls. 80% of U.S. exports don't require an export license, but 20% do. And it's not a question of whether you're selling an arm or a munition. It's a combination of different things that drive whether an export license is required. But the Director of Defense Trade Controls administers this particular law that controls the export of things that are on the U.S. munitions list, and that law is called the International Traffic in Arms Regulations. Oh, good. The slide disappeared for a minute, but it's back. Oh, it disappeared again. All right. Well, anyway, another aspect of the State Department that may be of interest to some of you is that the political section of an embassy is the State Department, and inside the political section is housed a defense attaché. This is a Department of Defense employee who's at the embassy under the State Department's legal authority. And sometimes the United States government either makes purchases of arms and munitions on behalf of foreign governments or alternatively facilitates their purchase. So that program is called the Foreign Military Sales Program, and that is administered by the defense attaché at post. When I say post, that's a generic term for any embassy anywhere in the world. So that's something else to be aware of. The Department of the Treasury has an office, it's called the Office of Foreign Assets Control, and they administer U.S. economic and trade sanctions. So, for example, if you wanted to export something to Iran, because Iran is subject to some very strict economic and trade sanctions, you would very likely need to get an export license from the Office of Foreign Assets Control. And to give you an idea, I had a client who wanted to export aircraft parts to Iran. She didn't think that she was going to get an export license, but she made the case to OFAC that the Iranian civilian fleet is so out of date that, you know, it's dangerous for everyday Iranians to be on, you know, commercial aircraft, that the sale was humanitarian assistance, and the Office of Foreign Asset Controls believed that, or Foreign Assets Control, believed that that was a legitimate, you know, argument, and she received an export license and the sale went forward. She wasn't lying. Her end user and end use was, you know, airlines, basically, for civilian travel around Iran. It was a legitimate argument. So that's something to consider. Now, I'm not going to go through every of these. I'm going to skip a couple, skip around here. We discussed a little bit the Department of Defense and the Foreign Military Sales Program. My agency has a counterpart in the Department of Agriculture. It's called the Foreign Agricultural Service. If we promote U.S. origin export in foreign markets, generally speaking, they're promoting specifically agricultural commodities. So the dividing line between the agricultural section of an embassy and the commercial section is usually, although not always, that the Foreign Agricultural Service does the agricultural commodities, and my agency, the commercial section, does agricultural chemicals, agricultural machinery, processed foods, things that have been manufactured. Usually, but not always, that's the case. And part of my purpose in being an Export Assistant Center Director is to guide you through some of these nuances. A couple of other agencies I'm going to mention, then we're going to go on to the next slide. The Agency for International Development, METSO, USAID, METSO Foreign Aid, let me see, what do we have here? We've got OPIC, is now called the Development Finance Corporation, can insure a U.S. company's foreign direct investment in a foreign country where that investment supports a foreign policy goal of the United States. U.S. Small Business Administration administers several loan programs that offer working capital in support of an export marketing plan. And let me see what else is on here. The Office of the U.S., actually, where is it? Ex-Im Bank. Where do I have Ex-Im Bank on this list? They should be somewhere there. Export-Import Bank of the United States. There it is. It's right column about halfway down. They offer insurance policies that should be very interesting to you as exporters. One of them can insure your foreign receivables against non-payment. Like any policy, there are premiums that need to be paid. Unlike normal policies, the premiums aren't paid on a monthly basis. They're paid on a transactional basis. It's 65 cents per $100 that you insure. So if there's no shipment, there are no premiums to be paid. But otherwise, it functions like a regular insurance policy, which is to say that there's a deductible, which is 5% of the face value of the receivable. So if there's a loss, the federal government reimburses you 95% of the face value of your receivable. And as I said, the cost of this policy is 65 cents per 100 that you insure. You can usually hide that in the purchase price of the item. Another interesting insurance product that they offer is that they can insure your bank's loan to your foreign buyer. That sounds kind of weird, but basically the United States government wouldn't insure a loan made by a private bank to an individual unless the proceeds of that loan went to you directly in support of your export. So it's cash in advance to you, but the loan contract's between your bank and your foreign buyer. So you have no responsibility for that. You've received the proceeds of the loan as payment in advance. Your only responsibility is to make good on the contract. And then the insurance policy is a contract between your bank and Ex-Im Bank. You don't have any responsibility for that either. You basically request this setup, but it's a means of offering financing to a foreign buyer. It's also a means of getting paid cash in advance, and that's the least risky payment vehicle. So let's not spend any more time on this slide. There are a bunch of bullets there. You can scroll through and click, click, click as you like. You can give me a call. You can give Chris a call. There are a bunch of touch points. We can all help you to navigate this slide. So let's go forward one, please. Okay. Can you, oh, no, went back. All right, so I said that we talked about the Commerce Department in a subsequent slide. So what kind of goodies do we have for you here? Bureau of Industry and Security controls the export of anything that's not elsewhere controlled. And that sounds like a silly expression, but basically in the last slide, we heard about how the Department of State controls the export of things that are on the U.S. munitions list. So by default, things that are on the U.S. munitions list are not the commodity jurisdiction of the Bureau of Industry and Security. There are a couple of other agencies, such as the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which controls the export of nuclear reactor vessels, or the Department of Energy, which controls special nuclear materials. FDA has a role controlling pharmaceuticals and drugs, certain drugs. So there are other agencies that control export. The Commerce Department, specifically the Bureau of Industry and Security, controls everything else. So, you know, I like to say even a pencil that's destined for Canada for use by a 10-year-old could be export controlled if that 10-year-old has the unfortunate coincidence that his name is Osama bin Laden. We know he's not the same Osama bin Laden. We know the real Osama bin Laden has been long dead, but that could trigger an export license requirement. My agency, the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service, within the International Trade Administration, is deliberately kept separate from the Bureau of Industry and Security to avoid a conflict of interest. I can help you understand the process for complying with U.S. export controls, but I can't do certain things. For certain things, you have to go directly to BIS. Now, the Bureau of the Census administers what's called the Schedule B. The Schedule B is the classification system for customs clearance to get stuff out of the United States. That's really not an official way of explaining it or very technical term-wise, but if you want a rubber meets the road explanation, they administer the Schedule B. There are several reasons why that's important. You know, if you wanted to know, does my item qualify for duty preference under a given free trade agreement, USMCA, for example, CORUS, CAFTA, DR, et cetera. Part of understanding that is the classification. And Chris or I can walk you through a search engine that they have on their website, Bureau of the Census, or you can petition them to help you to classify your item. But that is something that they do. They also administer the foreign trade regulations, which require that you log any export valued at or in excess of $2,500 on a database that's called the Automated Commercial Environment, ACE. And again, Chris or I can walk you through that process. This is specifically commodities exports. We've talked a little bit about my own agency, or my own bureau within the Commerce Department, the International Trade Administration. That's the subject of the next slide. So we're going to skip that for now. National Institute of Standards and Technology administers the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program. And the MEP in our state's called Florida Makes. And what Florida Makes does is they provide assistance to manufacturing companies on a range of manufacturing issues from Industry 4.0 to standards conformity. They also have a grant program that they offer to help manufacturers in various aspects of their business development, including international trade. The National Institute of Standards and Technology also has a set of standards attaches at select embassies around the world in the commercial section under my agency's legal authority that provide assistance on standards conformity, but also provide assistance overcoming technical barriers to trade that are based on standards that have nothing to do with health or safety or anything that would be permissible under international law. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has fisheries attaches at select embassies around the world who do very similar things to the standards attaches, also within the commercial section, also under my agency's legal authority. If you export fisheries products, that might be of interest to you. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has intellectual property attaches at select embassies around the world. Each of these select locations has a regional area of responsibility, so they have the globe covered. And they don't provide legal advice, but they can help you with understanding how to monitor and or enforce intellectual property assets and help you to understand the business counseling side of your intellectual property portfolio. And that should be of extraordinary interest to everyone on this call. Every company has intellectual property, and it's the core of your company's worth. If you didn't know that or understand that, know this: when it comes time to sell your company at the end of the day, it's nice that you have customer lists, but without that IP portfolio, your company's value is not what it needs to be. So if you haven't tidied up that aspect of your business, that's certainly something to talk with either Chris or me or another of the people from our export ecosystem here in Central Florida about. So if you could advance to slide one, Chris. All right, so I said I'd talk more about my specific bureau within the Commerce Department. So we're going deeper and deeper into the Maryushka doll, the Russian nesting doll. These are the three business units within the International Trade Administration. Enforcement and compliance enforces U.S. anti-dumping laws. Basically, dumping is a term in the field of economics that refers to a practice where a foreign entity sells product on the U.S. market for less than it sells for on the global market or back home, with the intent of knocking out domestic competitors and gaining an unfair, position in the market. And when a company such as yours or an industry association, if you represent an industry association such as yours, comes to the Commerce Department complaining of unfair practices in the U.S. market, enforcement and compliance does the investigation. They make the case. If they think that there's a strong enough case, they bring it to the U.S. government's attorneys, which would be in the office, the Executive Office of the President of the United States, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. Those attorneys evaluate whether there's a legal case, and if they think that there is a legal case, they take it to the World Trade Organization. If we prevail, we're given authorization to, collect punitive tariffs, which is they're designed to both punish the offending country and disincent them from continuing to do this. And so what then happens is enforcement and compliance looks at all of that country's imports into the United States, looking for politically sensitive constituencies in that other country, and that's where they apply these punitive tariffs. It's not applied against that specific product necessarily. And the proceeds from these punitive tariffs are redistributed to the industry that's been affected. So that's enforcement and compliance. Industry and analysis runs interference in the policy community in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the industries in the United States. So there are industry associations that they interface with. They also have what are called ITACs. These are boards of people who have self-nominated to join an ITAC, who have gone through a screening process and who advise INA. And so when the United States is looking at things like steel or aluminum tariffs, or they're looking at USMCA as a negotiation, for example, or other things that are happening in the trade policy community, industry and analysis's job is to feed your input into that process. And then finally, the U.S. Commercial Service, that's my agency. Like I was saying, we're the commercial section of embassies. We have our own people in approximately 70 foreign countries. That number goes up and down depending upon what makes most sense. We have U.S. Export Assistance Centers in approximately 100 cities across the United States, including one here in Orlando, the Orlando U.S. Export Assistance Center. The country desks have usually civil servants in Washington, D.C. that are experts in a given country, not surprisingly, and follow the commercial policy in that country and guide my agency's staffing patterns or its policy initiatives and negotiating positions and whatnot vis-a-vis those countries. The Advocacy Center authorizes the embassy to engage in what we call commercial advocacy. So if you're in a competitive public tender, let's say you're an architectural construction engineering company and you're bidding on a project to build a port in Africa, and you want the U.S. government to advocate on behalf of you as the U.S. bidder, or maybe you're part of a consortium and advocate on behalf of the U.S. bid, therefore, you would make application to the Advocacy Center. They would give authorization to the embassy in that country, and you would work with me and with the embassy in that country to then negotiate what you want to have done. From the things that they can do, what are you willing and able to do, and then how are we communicating with one another so we're not working at cost purposes. Finally, Select USA attracts inward foreign direct investment. So let's say that you're a multinational corporation, you've got foreign headquarters, the headquarters wants to move to the United States for reputational issues, or maybe it's closer to a key customer, or whatever happens to be. Select USA can run interference with the federal government, connect you with Enterprise Florida, that's our counterpart at the state level, and through Enterprise Florida with whatever county and or city government, organize incentives and other things like that to ensure that the investment takes place. Can you advance the slide? All right, so actually advance it one more slide. Chris's input was that actually should be the last slide. So what are our most popular services in the U.S. and foreign commercial service? Well, for partner identification, that is to say, find me a business partner overseas, the most sought after service is called the Gold Key service, and we're at 9:29 right now, Chris. Is this still a 1/2 hour program, or how long are we going for? You're on mute, by the way.
We're going for about half an hour, so we started 5 minutes late, so
wrap
give
this
yourself
up.
another 5 minutes.
All right.
Soon, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Oh, okay, so it's half an hour of speaking plus Q&A. Okay, good. All right, so the Gold Key service is a product where we identify, screen, and qualify potential business partners for a U.S. exporter. We arrange a set of up to 5 meetings in a single business day in a single foreign location for that U.S. exporter with the companies we've identified, screened, and qualified. And we facilitate those meetings for the U.S. exporter with the potential business partners. These could be buyers, they could be agents, representatives, distributors, et cetera. And when these meetings are over, we debrief the U.S. exporter on appropriate follow-up given what took place in the market and the local business culture. Because of COVID, we have altered the service a little bit. There's a virtual version. The international partner search was, in a previous era, everything that a Gold Key service is without the actual meetings, right? So what we're offering now is an international partner search with virtual introduction. So instead of flying into Xanadu and meeting face-to-face with Tom, Mary, Sue, and Jim, you would meet with these people using a platform like WebEx, for example, or MS Teams. In terms of partner qualification, we have a service that's called the International Company Profile, called the International Company Profile. And this is not your company's due diligence. We can't know what's important to your stakeholders, but it is information that's in support of your company's due diligence. So it includes things about the company's form of business organization, its principles, what their background and qualifications are, what the company's financials are, its banking relationships, its commercial relationships, its reputational issues. There's a bottom line that comes with this at the end of the report, and that is, do we recommend you do business with them? If we have concerns, what are they? So that is another of the main products that people come to us for. Otherwise, we have some customized services that we offer as well for identifying customers or creating a brand awareness campaign, et cetera, in foreign countries. If you can back this presentation up one slide, Chris. So who's eligible for our services? Generally speaking, if the company is not organized under the laws of the United States, it's a no-go, period. When I say that, there's BMW, for example, which is organized under the laws of Germany, but BMW USA might be organized under the laws of whatever, Delaware or South Carolina or some such thing. I actually haven't looked into how they're organized. We can help BMW USA, generally speaking, as a U.S. company. Now, for some of those services that I mentioned on the last slide, the Gold Key service, the International Partner Search with Virtual Introduction, and the International Company Profile, these are fee-based services. So for our fee-based services, there is a second qualification criterion, and that is that 51% or more of the ex-factory price of a good has to be from U.S. sources to qualify for those fee-based services, in addition to the fact that the company has to be organized under the laws of the United States. And if it's a services company, then 51% or more of the cost of the service has to come from U.S. sources, or we can't engage. That is actually my presentation. And if you want to forward it 2 slides, you can see my contact information. Good, that's we moved recently, and I did remember to change this. Now, what I'm going to tell you is the mobile phone number is your best way to reach me, or my email address, because we are not allowed in the office and we're not allowed to see people face-to-face for the time being. So I'm teleworking, and you'll need to reach me on my mobile phone. Yes, I do check the office number periodically, but periodically isn't the same thing as my phone ringing right now. So that's it. Take some questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now I have unmuted, I think, everyone. Paolo and Wilcadis, if you have any questions, you can try to say them out loud, and if it doesn't work, then let me know.
So we have 2 participants?
That's right. And I've taken down the presentation. I see there's a question from Paul Toledo in the Q&A box. To export IT services, what should be my main attention points?
You know, it's an interesting question, and you know, I don't want to say that it's necessarily the wrong question, but I think your starting point might be a little bit off. You're saying, I export IT products. My question to you is, you know, what is your company? You know, not specifically what's the name of your company, but, you know, what specifically do you sell? What are the end users? What are the end uses? How do your current buyers find you? You know, what are your selling points? You know, what differentiates you from other companies? And what's your appetite for risk? Some of these questions, you know, I should say all of these questions are important to answering the question you've asked. There may be additional questions, but the point of appetite for risk, for example, is to say that there's no right market and there's no wrong market. There are only right and wrong markets for you as a company. Appetite for risk and profit expectation make a big difference between exporting to a country that may be a little bit easier to export to, but doesn't offer the same returns, like let's say the Bahamas, right? It's a much smaller population. If you're just serving the Bahamian market, your profit potential is limited by the size of the market, right? But maybe your appetite for risk isn't all that great. It's right off the coast, et cetera. It's super easy to get to. They speak English. A lot of things about the Bahamas that make it attractive. So, you know, these are questions that you would want to work through before you say, what should be my first step? You know, if you're looking at a market like the Bahamas, for example, that may not have a whole lot of intellectual property issues off the top of my head, well, registration is still important. Monitoring and enforcement is still important, but you know, whether you decide to train your business partner to spot fakes right away may be a lower priority and therefore may not be a starting point as compared to China, where if it's not nailed down, they're going to steal it. You know, so your monitoring and enforcement becomes a higher priority. Let's see. Because of bandwidth, something. Hold on a minute. Can you still see me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can see
you
you fine.
back. Okay, yeah, I have this
Paulo has
warning
said
sign.
that they provide automation services for a variety of industries like hotels, property management companies, et cetera.
Well, then, you know, a place like the Bahamas may not be bad if hotels and property management companies, I'm going to assume things like summer rentals and these types of things are of interest, you know, so your market may actually be larger in the Bahamas than I may have, you know, thought of. But, you know, to my point, this is not a question that is answerable on a webinar. This is a question that requires, you know, some in-depth probing, you know, to kind of work out what the indicators of market potential may be. And from there, whether you choose to do something more scientific and therefore start applying statistics to these indicators by potential regions of the world that you might be interested in going to, and then weighting the statistics and then averaging them out so you can rank order the list. That's your MBA way of doing it. Or whether you choose to lick your finger, stick it in the air and say, you know, given my appetite for risk and all these other indicators and whatnot, you know, and eyeballing these countries, I'm going to say actually that one there, Xanadu, is where I want to start. Whether you choose the scientific or the artistic, it doesn't necessarily matter as much. What matters is that you look at these indicators, that you understand what makes you competitive and where you want to go in the world, not so much what country you want to go to, but what does this country look like? What do your buyers look like? If we know what these countries and buyers look like, we can start to speculate if we want the artistic version, or we can start to dump data on a spreadsheet if we want the scientific version.
Well, that's great, Ken. And I think what you've learned from this, Paulo, is that you'll benefit from contacting Ken and having a one-on-one meeting with him to discuss your situation in more detail, because Ken is going to be able to provide you with the answers that are specific to your company and how the U.S. Commercial Service is going to be able to help you achieve your export goals.
Great, thank you.
And do we have any other questions?
No.
Okay. All right, well, that being the case, I'd like to thank Ken for his time with us today and for sharing your experience and expertise. And I just will underscore that I'll be sending around a copy of the presentation. Also, this webinar has been recorded, so I'll send you a link to the recording if you want to go back and review some of the information that was shared today. And then finally, I'll send you Ken's contact information again so that it will be very easy to reach out to him. I also encourage everybody to join our following webinars. Next week, same time on Wednesday, we will be having Michael Cooney of Enterprise Florida come to talk about some of the great grants and programs that they offer to exporters, and they work in partnership with Ken and his colleague Mindy at the U.S. Commercial Service. Actually, maybe Ken, do you want to just say a quick word about the two people you have working at the U.S. Export Assistance Center here, and how you divide up work?
Yeah, okay, so, you know, the two people are Mindy Herzog and I. We're both former diplomats. Mindy's last post of assignment was Brazil. You know, my last post, well, foreign posting at least, was the U.S. mission to the European Union. So we do have regional expertise. Mindy Herzog is a research scientist, formerly a researcher in pharmaceutical medicines. And, you know, through some career changes and education and whatnot, she found herself in the field of international trade and then eventually became a foreign service officer working for us. So I have decided to leverage that expertise that Mindy had or has in pharmaceutical medicines and give her the medicines, healthcare, et cetera, portfolio, and then from there cascading down to other industries that are either distributed in a similar way or have similar needs. So she has a lot of the services industry, so you know, travel and tourism, et cetera. I, by contrast, from being here for a long time, have a lot of different areas of expertise, but you know, one of them that Mindy has been learning about is export controls, and another is intellectual property. So I took some industries that are very IP focused and export controls focused. So I have aerospace, defense, I've got, you know, franchising, I have, you know, others of these industries, and then from there, allied industries. So things that are sold similarly to defense articles, automotive, for example. So Mindy and I share IT. If it's health IT, it's Mindy. If it's other IT, it's me. So that's kind of our organization. We have 11 counties in Central Florida. So Flagler, Volusia, and Brevard on the East Coast, and then Citrus and Levy on the West Coast, and it's a big triangle in between. So, and there are other U.S. export assistance centers in the state that handle the balance of the state.
Okay,
thank you, Ken. So next week we'll be talking to Enterprise Florida. The following week we will have the District Export Council to talk about how they can help exporters, the mentorship that they will do for companies that are looking for someone to share their experience with them. And then finally, we will talk on the 30th to the Florida Small Business Development Center at UCF about the excellent export marketing plans that they can put together for companies. So I hope you'll be able to join us for all of those. And again, thank you for joining us today. And thank you to Ken for sharing your time with us.
Thank you both very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.